the CFR is broken down into all those little sub-paragraphs, and each one really kind of stands on its own. And if nothing else, take it to LCB, show them what this section says, and then they can make a determination how that section 12 interplays with that, because that's not exactly the way I read that in the CFR. It says it must be banded, and then it makes a provision that the bird could have also, in addition, you know, the microchip implanted.
Maureen, for clarification, I understand where Steve's going, but has the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service looked at this and blessed it, or?
Yes, they have.
And that's my question to Steve is, I understand where you're going, but it's gone through the department, gone through LCB, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has looked at it and given it its blessing. I understand your questions, but I don't know what beyond that we can do.
Well, actually, if it's an omission, let's say either on LCB's part or it's an omission on the service guy's part, because I had to sit down and read that language about 10 times. I think it's remiss not to put the part in there about the seamless metal band because it's clear as a bell in the CFR. I mean, it's there in black and white. I don't know how they can get around it. And it's just a clarification to me for a falconer not to get crosswise on any issue between a seamless metal band and a replacement band. So.
I think you may have an answer that could help us all out. Can you come up and state your name and get it on the record?
For the record, Corey Dalton again. It's not a falconer's responsibility to place a seamless metal band on a captive red bird because they're not propagators, and you can't put a seamless metal band on a bird over 10 days old. Their foot's too big. So it's just one interpretation versus another. And then, like I said, to the falconers, as we were discussing this we went over banding ad nauseum. And we understand it among our group. We have no misconceptions as to what that statement says for us. We've talked with Rob and asked him about some of the issues with it, and we talked with Maureen and Julie Meadows, the lady that issues all the bands, as well as Laura. And it's understandable, at least from what we've had numerous discussions about it with. So.
Okay, thank you.
One point I'd like to make there is that whatever band that's going to be placed on the bird is going to be provided by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, regardless of the style that Steve is talking about, because that's stated right there in that section. So whether it's seamless metal or permanent non-reusable, it's going to be whatever the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service provides us.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any other items, Steve?
And Maureen already covered it because we brought this up the other day on page 11, section 14, the issue of striking the word implantation and inserting microchip information in 2 locations. There are about 3 sentences apart there. Okay. And that would be it.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, bring it back to the commission. Any further comments? Seeing none, we'll close agenda item 11A and move on to 11B, Commission General Regulation 397 LCB file R04611 Raptor capture. Maureen again.
Maureen Hullinger, Nevada Department of Wildlife, to present CGR 397-4611 Raptor capture. Again, I'm just going to go through and point out where we made a fix in green. I think the first one is in section 7. Actually, it was, I think a member of the public brought this to our attention. It wasn't in green. Oh, it is. It's down in, I got to look further down in the section. It's section 7, down in subsection 2B. We added the supplied by the department at the end of the sentence. We added it in there. It doesn't necessarily have to be added if you read the sentence, but it just clarifies where the band would come from. It reads kind of funny, but when you do a capture, sometimes the falconers can have the goss, which is going to be required to be banded, and the ability to take something other than a goshawk on a raptor capture permit, and it could be a species that's not required to be banded. B is just so identifying that they shouldn't be putting that ban that could be for a required banded species on a species that's not required to be banded. So the green can stay in or you can take it out, but it just identifies where the ban's coming from. And that was it for any of our additional edits, I believe.
Okay, Commissioner McNitch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Maureen, there was I've heard people have asked me questions regarding the first section where regarding people other than the holder of a permit. So having a master or general falconry licensee go and collect the bird. Is that correct?
Section 2 does address situations where it's not a person other than the permittee could go and collect for the permittee. All the language is in there. If you want to make it more restrictive and remove sections, this is the opportunity to identify that.
You know, at first hand, just a comment on it. You know, I guess when you first start to read it, you know, you definitely have a few trepidations, but when you get down into it and it's starting to circle itself back into people that should be experienced and have experience doing that, the general and the master falconry licensee, I don't know why that would be of concern. And there's provisions in there that talk about it would go against their count for collection for the take. So, you know, there's not a lot of incentives to do that a lot because it goes against your own personal permit allowances. So now that I understand it a little bit better and I've read it, it's not a problem for me. I didn't know if that was, falconers are good with it and everybody seems to be good with it, so.
Any other commission comments or questions? Commissioner Rain?
Basically, a question that might clarify some of this. Perhaps Corey could answer. How often does this chapter even come into play? I mean, this can't be very common. Yes, if you could, please. Just kind of put it in perspective for us.
Corey Dalton, for the record. This is something that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife inserted in. It's something that is really amongst the falconers in Nevada. It's a non-issue. So leaving it in or taking it out to us makes really no difference because we've already talked about this amongst ourselves. And honestly, there's only 5 or 6 permits per year that are even issued by Julie Meadows or any other person at Endow. And usually half of those are apprentices, and it's already against the law for an apprentice to trap by himself. He has to be with a general or master, preferably a sponsor. So you're only talking about 1 or 2 permits to trap a bird in the state of Nevada. And I personally and every falconer I know say there's no way I'm going to hang my butt on the line without a permit in my hand that's in my name to go get a bird. So to us, it's a non-issue. So whether you leave it in or take it out, most of the falconers in this state don't trap. I'd say 95% of them don't trap. So whether it stays in or comes out is not really an issue. To us, on like a comparison issue to some other form of hunting or take, this is not like somebody in your stead going elk hunting for you. It's not even close to the same. It's just gaining your bird. And because without it, you have no falconry season if you're a wild bird user. And then the other issue is we're still trying to finalize working with the commission and staff to get the trapping seasons amended to address what the Fed gave us. So there's no longer dates, which will eliminate this from ever happening, because if somebody calls you and says, hey, today's the last day of IS season, can you go get me a bird so I have one this season? We can say, no, you can go tomorrow and get your own bird because the season will be longer. This season change came about because all of our species that we're allowed to use for falconry have been grouped into the same months for trapping, for IS take, and for passage take. And they don't breed at the same time, and even within their own species, they don't breed at the same time. And if a winter is long or short, that pushes the breeding seasons around. So to fix it, we were just going to have a discussion with NDOW further about just having the trapping season be January 1st to December 31st. There's been millions of dollars spent by the Fish and Wildlife Service that said that falconry trapping has zero impact at all, immeasurable, on what birds we take and how many. So it just makes it easier for us. If there happens to be a long winter, it pushes breeding forward. If there happens to be a short winter, it pushes breeding earlier. And this is all addressed now, so there's no reason for anybody to go trap in my stead unless I either have a long-term disability or I am permanently disabled, or if I'm just simply incapable of being at the site and going. So there's 3 provisions for this take of a bird of prey by another licensee without that permit. The first addresses the ADA Act for people who physically can't go for a long-term or permanent disability. The other one is that the person is either like not trained to use, say, rock climbing equipment or ascenders to go up a cliff. And then the third is just that they're not there for whatever reason. So to us, it's a non-issue. So any questions about that any further?
Any further questions? Thank you.
I have to get taller or something. For the record, Steve Albert. Basically, I did want to speak to that issue a little bit. The first section's in the regulation, what I call the proxy capture. I don't have any problem, for example, if somebody did have that, a significant impairment, a permanent physical impairment or long-term impairment. You know, if he asks another general or master falconer to help him, you know, basically, number one, as long as he's at the scene. I don't think it's a good idea to have a fellow living in California who just decides he doesn't want to come to Nevada to get his goshawk out of a nest, you know, using some proxy friend of his. I did kind of draft up some language if we did want to just specifically authorize the people with long-term or permanent physical impairments, or for certain folks that just may not be able or capable of climbing that tree or rappelling down the cliff. But, and from there, it would be broken down into the person must be physically on scene if he can, but there may be situations where somebody is a paraplegic in a wheelchair and maybe physically can't get to the scene, with or without an ATV, for example. So I don't have any heartburn for a couple of those situations, but if you're a healthy person and the only thing stopping you from coming to Nevada to take your bird is you don't feel like it, then I don't think it's appropriate to be taking the bird. I think that's part of the whole situation, is being out there and enjoying the outdoors. And even if you can't climb up the tree, at least you can be relatively close and be part of that whole situation. So I don't know if you want me to go through some of the language I suggested, because I don't know how you feel about it. I made copies that I could hand out.
If you made copies, go ahead and hand them out, and we'll look at them before tomorrow.
Okay. So that would be on section 2. I'm going to give it to you. Again, we already commented on the last regulation, and I heard all the comments. I just want to make the point here on the record that under Section 7, under subsection 3, where it talks about the captive bred raptors, that they must be banded with a seamless metal band. Again, I realize that that's an issue for raptor propagators, as he says. The problem is that is not the way the CFR is written. It is written in the capture and banding section of the CFR. So my druthers would be that the seamless metal band language be put back in there, but I'm not going to get bloody over it. And I have that one other, we fixed the thing on the hacking, right? Okay. That's it, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Any other public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission. Any more comments or questions on this? Seeing none, we'll close this workshop and move on to 11C, Commission General Regulation 424, LCB File T002-13, Transportation Permit. Chief Game Warden Rob Buonamici. And we realize this is a temporary permit, or temporary, that we're going through here.
For the record, Rob Buonamici, Chief Game Warden. Commissioner Rob is correct. This is a temporary permit. The reason this is before you is we were asked by a member of the hunting community to simplify the transportation requirements and allow for the transportation of big game animal without an individual having to go into town to a licensed agent or track down a game warden in order to allow someone else to transport their deer, elk, bighorn sheep, what have you, to their residence or wherever they want to transport it. So that being said, that's briefly the background behind it. And then on what it amends NAC 502-403, and in section 1 you'll see where the current language is struck in lieu of obtaining a transportation permit as described in 503.040. And that allows us to continue on with the new language by striking that. So continuing on to section 9, to kind of make this a little easier, what the whole concept is a hunter's in the field, harvest a deer, for example. I harvest a deer and I want a friend of mine to take it back home to my house because I want to stay with another friend of mine out in the field to help them on their deer hunt. So I can then, on the tag that I'm issued, have the ability to have the transportation permit right there on the tag that I'm issued. So I can make that happen right on the spot in the field, not have to go to a licensed agent to the nearest town or hope that a game warden drives by my camp or what have you. So that's the underlying premise behind it. So in section 9, what that does is basically states that a portion of the big game tag will be designated as a transportation permit. And then 9A is the tag holder's requirement, basically, that the tag holder, the person may, after lawfully harvesting their animal, and in the company of a witness and the transporter, sign, date, and write the time of transfer on that portion of the tag. And then section A1, if the tag holder is a juvenile, they obviously probably don't have a driver's license or state ID, so they can just utilize their date of birth. And then under B, the transporter, now we're talking about the transporter, not the tag holder. So the transporter, again, in the company of the tag holder and witness, signs, dates, writes the time of transfer, and his or state DMV number on both portions of the transportation permit that are provided on as part of the tag. And then C is with regards to the witness. This third-party witness can be anybody, doesn't have to be a hunter, can be a rancher, can, whoever's in the area that's willing to do that. So the witness in the company of the tag holder and transport also signs and dates that they witnessed the transfer. And then under D, the tag holder, there's a typo there. After all signatures are acquired, the tag hold, that should be tag holder, retains that portion of the transportation permit labeled tag holder copy. And the transporter retains that portion of the transportation permit labeled transporter copy for a minimum of 1 year after the date written on the transportation tag. Then under E, the transportation permit must stay attached to the tag until the transportation permit is used. And there's a better way that can be written, maybe perhaps until the animal is transported to its destination, because being used can be interpreted multiple ways. And then under G, the transportation permit cannot be filled out until the animal is harvested and the transfer of possession goes from the tag holder to the transporter. And G, the transportation permit on the tag can only be used in conjunction with the tagged animal. And then under H, that just, again, that addresses the cape or scalp, what that means. And then under I, we were just proposing an amendment there and deleting I totally, because there's a taxidermy portion already addressed, so it's kind of redundant. And then NAC 502-390, before the tag holder can legally hunt, he or she must sign, date, and write the time of signature on the tag in the spaces provided for the tag to be valid. So the reason behind this is to make it more difficult, is probably the best way to put it, for somebody to give me their tag and say, hey, I can't make it on the hunt, so Rob, can you go ahead and, shoot my deer for me? And then just use the transportation permit portion, we'll fill it all out, just fill it out after you kill the animal, and, you're gonna be home free if a game warden stops you. So that's why we're requiring that the tag, recommending the tag be signed, dated to validate it, which many states do. That way, if I'm caught in the field with my friend's tag and it's not signed, with the anticipation that I fill out everything if I end up killing his or her animal, it makes it more difficult to follow through with that crime. Is it foolproof? No.
Commissioner Rain.
I got couple things. One, I believe, is an error in the lettering. If you look at G, there's two Gs. I suggest we take the G that's immediately after
Right.
E and change that to F. And that one that would now be F, the first G you're seeing on the screen there, that wording seems a bit, a bit off. And just after glancing at it, it appears that the wording might be best presented to preserve the same meaning you need, but perhaps better wording would be until the animal is harvested, and then I would insert possession of, I'll just read it as I think it should be. Let me see. The transportation permit cannot be filled out until the animal is harvested and possession of the harvest animal is transferred from the tag holder to the transporter. Because as it is here, it's transfer of possession goes. It just doesn't rhyme, It just doesn't flow with the way the rest of it is structured. It seems really disjointed. But if it goes, and possession of the harvest animal is transferred from the tag holder to the transporter, that gets what you wanted said without possession goes from. Possession goes from is a little bit, funky, awkward, archaic, not in.
Now, that language is fine with us.
Throwing that out. And also, E, I'm trying to figure out how that's exactly going to work in E. Must stay attached to the tag until the transportation permit is used. As in used up, as in no longer necessary. That last used is.
That's why we would propose some language along the lines until the animal is transported to its destination.
On E.
Correct.
All right, here,
Until the wildlife is transported to its destination.
did I miss it somewhere? All right, until the wildlife is transported, striking transportation permit is used.
Right.
Wildlife.
Is transported to its destination.
I think that'd be a lot more clear. Yeah, it's good language. People can understand that.
Commissioner Macbeth?
Okay, so when I read this, I was wondering about the witness. And so it sounds, your response at the very end, you're looking for some way to, so you're thinking by having a witness, sign this, that eliminates the issue of somebody, just signing over their tag to their buddy and going and shoot the deer, right?
It doesn't totally eliminate that possibility because that's the definition of a conspiracy, 2 or more people getting together to conspire to commit a crime. So it doesn't automatically eliminate that from happening, but it makes it more difficult and I believe will cause somebody that is contemplating committing that type of violation to pause, and because they're going to have to drag somebody else into it.
And I guess I'd just point out is that, the whole purpose of having the transportation tag, transportation permit a part of your tag is the convenience of not having to go get a transportation permit. But at that point, now we're going to have to go find a witness. We're going to have to go find a witness to be able to do the transaction, right?
Correct, and in most of these cases, it's not 100% by any means, but, think of all the times you've been out hunting. Have you ran across other hunters, fishermen, other individuals, fairly close to your camp, or where you've actually hunted?
Yeah, I guess I just don't have a criminal mind. And it would be
And we
a lot
appreciate
more-
that.
Yeah, and it'd be a lot more convenient if I could just, whoever I'm hunting with, because a lot of times I'm not hunting with three people. I do hunt, usually with somebody else. But, at that point, if I did want to, continue to hunt, then I'm gonna have to find somebody. And in reality, that may not be that difficult, but I can see there'll be some circumstances I'll be out in the middle of nowhere and I'll need to find somebody and I won't. So, but I like generally the idea of the convenience of it, that's for sure.
Commissioner Drew?
Yeah, just one point of clarification. I think it is clear the way it's written, but under 9A, it says, after having lawfully harvested their animal and in the company of a witness and the transporter. The intent here is not that the company or the witness and the transporter has to be with the person when they harvest, right?
That's
And
correct.
we're comfortable that the and separates if I harvest an animal on my own. And then later, in the company of the transporter and the witness who weren't with me when I harvested it. See what I'm saying there?
Yeah, because it does refer to the person may after having lawfully harvested.
Okay.
So they don't have to be there when you harvest.
Okay. And then the question I had was on 9D, where it talks about, after the use of the permit and everything, that we essentially, the tag holder and the transporter have to keep a copy for a minimum of 1 year. Maybe just your reasoning on that.
The reasoning behind that is through Operation Game Thief or what have you, we'll oftentimes get reports way after the fact that, hey, do you realize Rob's buddy actually shot his deer? Rob was never on the hunt. They use this new transportation permit deal to sneak the deer home on. And that's the reason for that. Statute of limitations on misdemeanors is a year. So that was the logic behind it.
So would you envision then actually printing that requirement on the transportation permit so that it's clear to whoever's using it that, hey, I need to keep a copy of this? Is that
I'm not sure how much I'd have to talk to Maureen because we're trying to fit everything on the tag without increasing the tag size.
Any other questions? There's two parts to this. Should we do public comment on the first part, and then we have a demerit part? So, Commissioner Drew? Good? Okay, let's take public comment on the transportation permit. Gil? And then Mr. Elmore.
Giuliano Caution Advisory Board. Our CAB discussed this and felt very strongly that this is really going to be a great thing to do. And we think it's going to make life simpler for a lot of people because as it is now, it can be very difficult to find people who are certified to do this, transporters, and the people, you go to the place where it is and, oh no, Harry's not here. He's the guy that fills out these forms and he knows where they are. I don't know where those permits are, and come back tomorrow or Monday because we're closed, next 2 days. So this is good. Thank you.
Mr. Elmore.
For the record, Darren Elmore, speaking on behalf of myself. Just to let you guys know that I'm the hunter who presented this question with this last August. I had drawn an antelope tag in northern Nevada along with a good friend of mine. We actually tried to pre-arrange for a transportation permit. That's when I learned about this entire process and really how cumbersome this ultimately was on two responsible sportsmen trying to follow the letter of the law. So I started to ask some questions, got in touch with Rob, and even Endow's law enforcement admitted that the current regulations are perhaps a bit antiquated and this could be just a whole lot simpler for sportsmen. I've learned in this process, unfortunately, not everybody's like Commissioner Macbeth, and we have to balance sportsman's friendly versus the needs, wants, and desires of Endow's law enforcement. This is, quite honestly, I think this is about as easy as it gets for a Nevada sportsman. I was thrilled when Rob and Christie presented the concept of, hey, let's just attach it to the tag. several other western states that I'm familiar with do it that way. It just doesn't get any easier. Yes, we have to meet the needs of law enforcement who are trying to protect the resource. That's going to require a third-party witness to bring some level of integrity to this process. And I think we can get through the weeds here and come up with something it's ultimately as easy as it gets for the guys who are trying to do things right. Unfortunately, the guys who are going to do things wrong are going to do things wrong, and that's why Mr. Buonamici has a job. So I'd ask you, take a look at this. It sounds like we have good, strong support, but I ask that you approve these regulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Matt Murray, Elko County, and we did address this at our board meeting as well, and unanimously accepted it. It is a great program because it is such a cumbersome process right now for transportation of big game animals.
For the record, Tom Castanelli with Humboldt County. We also voted on this unanimously to pass this bill, or this. I've been involved in trying to get transportation permit. I've hunted with some military kids and having them zing off right after and it is a daunting task the way it is right now. And this is definitely needed. I've hunted with a husband-wife who the wife harvested first and the husband was going to stay and she had to go home with her baby in a small car so she couldn't take the animals. We run into big troubles there trying to get a transportation permit. I just think it's time to make this a lot easier for the sportsmen of Nevada. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brad Johnston, Lyon County Citizen Advisory Board. I won't repeat the reasons, but we too, for the reasons already stated, unanimously passed a motion at our meeting in support of this regulation. Thank you.
Thank you. Ken?
For the record, Ken Joy, Nevada Bighorns Unlimited. We are in support of Commission General Regulation 424, LCB file number T00213, Transportation Permit Temporary. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson?
Larry Johnson, representing myself on this. Again, the existing regulation is more than cumbersome. Just this last summer, I'm a director of Nevada Outdoorsmen in Wheelchairs. Our hunters don't have the ability to transport game. When you're after hours, when you're out in the hills, I mean, this is totally unworkable the way it is now. Support the concepts. I personally, like Commissioner Macbeth, have an issue with the witness portion of this. I don't know how many times I've come out of the mountains on horseback at 11 o'clock at night with my wife and I, and if you're in separate vehicles, you can be cited, and I know people who have been pulled over, family members pulled over for this specific violation. I really ask you to consider that witness portions of it. A different mindset, I realize, between enforcement and probably myself. I like to add opportunity. I like to add convenience. I don't like to make things more difficult for the law-abiding sportsman. I'm all for catching and punishing the offender, but don't make things more difficult than you have to for law-abiding sportsmen. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Steve?
For the record, Steve Albert, just kind of representing myself as a sportsman in the state of Nevada. Rob, there's just a couple things I would do to this, and aside from the witness deal, in that subsection 9, where it says, except as otherwise provided in this section, a person to whom a game tag has been lawfully issued and the tag has been lawfully validated. I would insert validated and attached per NAC 502.390 and 502.400, because they're part and parcel. You really can't do one without the other. And the we shouldn't, in a sense, start the transportation process before the tag's been attached. Under 9A, instead of saying the person may after having, I thought you might just say the tag holder must, after having lawfully harvested their animal, then he must do those things. It's not a permissive situation. It's what he has to do if he wants to allow somebody else to transport his animal. So basically, I would just say the tag holder must, after having lawfully harvested their animal. Then in that same subsection or paragraph there, it says, right the time of transfer, his or her state DMV number. I don't know why you just don't say his or her state issued driver's license or identification number. That's what it is. It's, you know, when you go to the DMV statutes and regs, that's just what they call them. Under where they have that little I, where it refers to the juvenile, if the tag holder is a juvenile who doesn't have a, I would say, a state-issued driver's license number or ID, it might not just be a juvenile. It could be some people just don't have them. They don't have an ID, you know, or they may not have that type of stuff. So, you know, I'd consider it just saying if the tag holder does not have, or you could say including a juvenile, if the tag holder does not have, then the state-issued ID number or driver's license number, he'll just use his date of birth as Rob previously stated. I think you covered down in that paragraph E, it said the transportation permit must stay attached to the tag until, and I think you guys addressed this, until the animal has reached its point of destination. I think Commissioner Range brought that up. I would consider on the back, I think Rob indicated under that paragraph I, that they may delete that because it's not necessary. I'd consider putting a provision in there in this language that I'm going to give to you. I've typed up and I can pass around. This language I'm going to state is consistent with the tag language that's already existing in regulation or statute. And this would say, except as otherwise provided in this subsection, which means everything in subsection 9, it is unlawful for any person to use or possess a transportation permit issued to any other person, or to transfer or give a transportation permit issued to him to any other person, except as allowed in the subsection. And that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Any more public comment? Rex?
Rex Flowers, Washoe County. We voted to support this with the caveat of eliminating the sentence concerning validation of a tag, taking out anything about validating a tag. It was brought up here that, you know, it's another step to keep a dishonest person or someone who may think to go dishonestly honest. And by having a third-party witness, you've already, I think, given enough consideration to it. We don't need to put more on our law-abiding hunters or our sportsmen out there that now they need to sign off on these tags. Thank you.
Sean?
Sean Shea, just for my personal thing. Hey, on section 8, It does not mention the carcass. On taxidermy, there's being a lot of guys now that are using the skeletal stuff for reproduction to make mannequins. So I was hoping something like that could be added to that too, because it says on the non-edible